Welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight we will not speak of great battles, emperors, or world-shaking revolutions. Instead, we will journey together to a place where time seems to slow down, a place governed by the rhythm of the tides and the turning of day and night. Imagine you are standing on a lonely rock, surrounded by the steady sound of waves crashing against the cliffs. Before you is a towering stone structure, sturdy and silent, reaching for the sky. This is the Lighthouse, a quiet sentinel of the sea. And tonight we will live a full day in the life of its keeper, on an ordinary day in the 19th century. Their life was not one of novelistic drama. It was a symphony of repetitive tasks, of meticulous care, and of a profound solitude that was also deeply peaceful. Now allow your mind to unwind. Take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Let us begin a day in the life of a lighthouse keeper. Before the first rays of the sun could touch the horizon, the lighthouse keeper was already awake, not by the sound of an alarm clock, but by a biological rhythm honed over thousands of nights. His small bedroom was on a lower floor of the tower, furnished simply with an iron bed, a small wooden table, and a wardrobe. The air still held the chill of the night. He did not hurry. Every movement was deliberate, purposeful. He put on his rough canvas work clothes and a pair of old leather boots. The first task of the day was not a hot cup of tea, but the climb to the top of the tower. He began the familiar journey up the cast-iron spiral staircase. His footsteps echoed with a steady, rhythmic clump, clump, the only sound breaking the tower's silence. Each step was cold beneath the soles of his boots. He passed small, thick windows that looked out onto a gray-blue expanse of sea and a sky that was slowly beginning to change. When he reached the lantern room, the powerful beam of the lamp was still rotating, diligently performing its duty. The circular room was enclosed by large glass panes, and at its center was the heart of the lighthouse, a giant Fresnel lens. It looked like a colossal glass beehive, sparkling, capturing, and focusing the light from a single oil lamp at its core, turning it into a beam visible for dozens of miles. The first task of the morning was to extinguish the flame that had burned all night. He gently lowered the linen curtains around the lens. This was a rule of utmost importance. Direct sunlight, passing through the Fresnel lens, could converge and set fire to the lamp or the tower itself. These curtains, like the eyelids of a giant, protected the lighthouse from the power of the day. Next, he carefully extinguished the oil lamp. The faint smell of burnt whale oil or kerosene lingered in the air, a scent unique to this place. He removed the lamp's wick, using a special pair of scissors to trim away the charred part from the previous night. A perfect cut was crucial. Even a tiny imperfection on the wick could create smoke, which would cloud the lens and diminish the light's effectiveness. The final task before the sun was fully up was to write in the logbook. On a small desk in the corner of the room lay a thick, leather-bound book. With a fountain pen, he recorded the information from the past night. The time the light was extinguished, the weather conditions at dawn, the amount of oil consumed, whether any ships had passed within sight, and any unusual observations. His handwriting was steady, clear, and entirely objective. Wind southwest, light, sea calm, visibility good. No vessels sighted. Light performed as normal. As he finished the last line, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the curtains, painting faint streaks of light on the floor. Another night had passed. The lighthouse had completed its duty. Now it was time for it to rest and to prepare for the night to come. After completing his morning duties, the lighthouse keeper returned to his living quarters. This was a time of stillness, of personal chores, and of immersing himself in solitude. His breakfast was simple: a little oatmeal cooked with water, a slice of dry bread, and a cup of strong tea. He ate alone, in a silence broken only by the sound of the wind whistling softly through a door crack and the distant calls of seagulls. From the kitchen window, he could see the sea stretching to infinity. Sometimes he would see a pod of dolphins swimming by, or a seal sunning itself on a nearby rock. They were his only neighbors. Most of the morning and midday was dedicated to the maintenance of the tower and the living quarters. Everything had to be kept in perfect condition. The moisture and salt in the sea air were the sworn enemies of metal and wood. He would spend hours cleaning and polishing the grass and bronze fixtures in the tower, the staircase handrail, the doorknobs, the parts of the lamp's rotating mechanism. He used a homemade mixture of vinegar and ash to scrub them until they shone again. This was not just a job, it was a relentless battle against the corrosion of nature. He checked the oil barrels, ensuring they were sealed tight. He checked the food stores, carefully calculating the amount of flour, potatoes, and salted meat he had left until the next supply ship arrived, which could be weeks or even months away if the weather was bad. Everything had to be meticulously planned. If the weather was fine, he would go for a walk around the base of the tower on the small, narrow path. He breathed in the fresh sea air, feeling the salt spray on his skin. He watched the clouds, trying to predict the weather for the coming night. He was a meteorologist, a watchman, a mechanic, and a housekeeper, all in one. Noon was usually the time he reserved for himself. He might sit and read an old book, its pages yellowed and imbued with a musty scent. Or he might carve small model ships from pieces of driftwood that had washed ashore. Sometimes, he would just sit and look out at the sea, letting his mind drift with the waves. The silence was not empty. It was filled with tiny sounds, the lapping of the waves, the whisper of the wind, the cry of a bird, the crackle of the fire in the hearth. He had learned to listen to and understand the language of stillness. Life here had no room for haste. Every task was performed slowly, carefully. The repetition of daily chores was not boring. Rather, it provided a sense of security and order amidst the wild and unpredictable sea. In the early afternoon, the most important task of the day began, maintaining the lens. This was a ritual, a job that demanded absolute concentration and patience. The lighthouse keeper returned to the lantern room. He brought with him a special set of tools, soft chamois cloths, lint-free linen, a box of red polishing powder, rouge powder, and small feather dusters. First, he gently pulled back the curtains. Daylight flooded in, causing the hundreds of small prisms of the Fresnel lens to sparkle brilliantly. It was like a giant diamond. The work began with dusting. He used the feather duster, carefully sweeping away any dust from every face of the prisms. Each speck of dust could diminish the power of the light by a tiny fraction. He moved around the lens systematically, from top to bottom, inside and out, not missing a single spot. After dusting, he began to clean. He would breathe gently on the glass surface, creating a thin film of condensation, then use the soft chamois cloth to wipe it lightly in a circular motion. He had to do this for every single prism. There were hundreds, sometimes thousands of them. This task could take hours. Occasionally, he would find a faint smudge from salt spray or oil vapor. For this, he would use the polishing powder. He would dip a linen cloth into the powder and gently, very gently, rub the spot until it disappeared completely, and the glass surface was once again crystal clear. While he worked, he was completely silent and focused. His mind was solely on the task at hand. His hands moved with practiced skill. He knew every curve, every angle of this glass jewel. It was not just an instrument, it was his companion, his responsibility, and his pride. The safety of countless sailors depended on its brightness and clarity. After the lens was clean, he moved on to the brass parts of the lamp assembly. He polished them until he could see his reflection. Every reflective surface had to be perfect to maximize the amount of light emitted. Finally, he would check and refill the lamp with oil, ensuring everything was ready for the night. He also checked the rotational mechanism, a giant clockwork system that needed to be wound every few hours to ensure the lens rotated at the correct speed, creating the lighthouse's unique flashing characteristic that sailors used for identification. When he was finished, the lantern room was in a state of perfection. Everything was clean, gleaming, and ready. The afternoon sun shone through the meticulously cleaned lens, creating small rainbows that danced on the walls. It was a beautiful sight, a silent reward for his painstaking work. Dusk began to fall. The western sky turned from blue to orange, then to a brilliant red. This was a time of transition, a moment of peace before the night and its duties began. The lighthouse keeper prepared his supper. Again, it was a simple meal from his stores, perhaps a stew made from salted meat and dried vegetables, or a fish he had caught that afternoon. The warm smell of food filled the small kitchen, a scent of life and comfort in the vastness of the sea. He sat at his table alone once more. He ate slowly, savoring each bite. Through the window, he watched the sun slowly sink into the sea. When the last fiery orange disk disappeared below the horizon, he knew it was time. He cleaned his dishes, putting everything back in its proper place. Then he changed back into his work clothes, adding a thick coat to ward off the night's chill. It was time to light the lamp. He climbed the spiral staircase again. This time, his steps seemed to have a greater sense of ceremony. He was on his way to perform his most sacred duty. In the lantern room, darkness was gathering. He needed no candle or lamp to find his way. He was intimately familiar with this space. He went to the lamp and opened the protective glass cover. With a single match, he carefully lit the well-prepared wick. The flame was small at first, flickering. He slowly adjusted the wick, providing more air. The flame grew, stabilized, and cast a brilliant, warm yellow light. The entire room lit up. That light was captured by the Fresnel lens, focused and transformed into a powerful beam that swept through the gathering darkness of the sea. The lighthouse was awake. Night had fallen completely. Outside, there was only darkness, the sound of the waves, and the light of the stars. The lighthouse keeper began his watch. He could not sleep for long stretches. He had to stay awake to watch over the light. Every few hours, he had to wind the clockwork mechanism. He had to constantly check the flame, ensuring it burned steadily and without smoke. He had to wipe away any salt spray or frost that might form on the outer panes of the lantern room glass. Between these checks, he sat on a wooden stool in the lantern room, or in a small watchroom just below. He listened. He could hear the steady tick-tock of the clockwork mechanism. He could hear the whistle of the wind as it picked up. He could distinguish between the sound of waves breaking on the shore and the sound of waves hitting the base of the tower itself. He looked out into the darkness. His light swept a steady circle over the surface of the sea. Each lighthouse had its own characteristic, a unique cycle of light and dark. Sailors at sea could identify their position based on it. His light was a message, a promise of safety. Sometimes, in the pitch-black night, he would see a faint light in the distance. It was a ship. He would watch it, recording its direction and the time it appeared in his logbook. He felt a silent connection to the unknown people on that vessel. He was their guardian, though they would never know his face. The nightly logbook also recorded other details: the condition of the light, the wind speed, any unusual events. Midnight, a flock of migratory birds struck the lantern glass. No damage. Or, 2 a.m., heavy fog, sounded the foghorn. His life was measured by the rotations of the light, by the pages of his logbook, by the silent watches in the night. It was a solitary existence, but not a lonely one. He was a part of the sea, a part of the sky, and a vital link in the fragile chain connecting humanity to the vast ocean. He sat there, in the warm glow of the lamp, listening to the symphony of the night and waiting for the dawn. And so, another day passes. When the first streaks of a new day appear in the east, the lighthouse keeper will begin his cycle once more. Extinguishing the light, covering the lens, writing in the log, performing maintenance, waiting. His life was a perpetual loop, simple and necessary. A life of quiet dedication, built on a foundation of regularity and responsibility. In our noisy and ever-changing world, there is a strange peace in the story of the man and his tower. Now, let the final sounds of the sea and the gentle light of the beacon lull you to sleep. Let the stillness and order of this life bring you a sense of calm. Sleep well,